In this video, I'll be introducing you guys to alternating current, and first off, we're going to talk about direct current. So this is what you guys have been using. This is what you guys have been doing math with. Let's say that you had a direct current, and this was, let's say, 5 amps, okay? So throughout your entire circuit, or throughout the entire section of the circuit that's 5 amps, it's simply just going to be, well, 5 amps all the time, right? It's not going to change. It's not going to go up and down. But what about alternating current? Well, alternating current looks like this. Goes up and down and up and down in a sinusoidal way. So this is called AC, alternating current, correct? And the thing about alternating current is that it has peaks and it has lows. Now here's the thing. These lows are in the negative, in the negative current, right? So if, let's say this was at this peak, it's 5 amps up here. At the trough, right? Trough is the lowest part of a wave. The crest is the highest part of a wave. It's negative 5 amps. I'll show you why this works later, why you're not just losing power doing this. But alternating current has a lot of advantages. Our American electrical grid is run on alternating current due to the fact that you can actually change the current and voltages using transformers, which allows us to be able to transport electricity at a further distance with lower resistance. Okay? Because, you know, the electricity you're getting is fucking 10 miles away, and the wires are resistive, right? The copper wires still have some resistance. So alternating current just allows you to actually up the current using transformers so that you can have a lower resistance. The higher the current, the lower the resistance, of course. But that's besides the point. That was just some extra information. Maybe you didn't need to know that. Maybe you do. But here's the thing about alternating current. The reason why it actually still generates power is because even if the current is alternating, the voltage is also alternating too. So let's draw a sine wave for the voltage. And let's say this wave represents the voltage, just blue wave. And the blue wave's peaks for voltage are, say this is 2 volts, and say this is negative 2 volts. All right. And when the waves are peak to peak. So what this means is basically when the peaks of the wave align. So let's say right here is, I don't know, x is equal to 1. Right, x is equal to 1. These two peaks, the peaks of both the waves are at x is equal to 1. I know the drawing is kind of not to scale, but if both of the peaks are at the same x value, then you are in phase. This is what we call in phase. So when you're in phase, the peaks, the crests, and the troughs, all for both current and voltage, are the same. So both the peaks, so both the crests and the troughs have the same x values throughout the entire alternating current. Now, I'm going to explain why this works. Well, when you have a circuit, the thing that actually generates power, right, I think that's actually giving energy to your circuit, like a light bulb, is watts, right? The voltage and the current aren't doing anything directly. The voltage times the current is actually what gives the power to your, actually gives the energy to your circuit, whatever you're trying to power, right? So how do you calculate watts again? Well, you calculate power with voltage times current. And this is equal to power, correct? Well, here's the thing. If your voltage and current are in phase when the troughs are aligned with the troughs and the crests are aligned with the crests, did I say crust? Okay, I don't mean by crust. But when the peaks and the troughs are aligned, then that means that your currents and your voltages are both negative at the same time. So at the positive portions of your current and voltage, well, a positive current times a positive voltage is equal to a positive power, correct? Well, what about a negative voltage and a negative current? So if the negative voltage is multiplied by the negative current, you get a positive power, right? Negative voltage times negative current, the negatives cancel out to get a positive power. And this is what actually gives power to your system. That's why AC actually works, right? AC works because of this. Because of this property of power, where you multiply the voltage by the current to get the amount of energy that you're actually sending to your circuit. Now, what if your circuit was, what if it was out of phase? All right, what if it was out of phase? Well, then you're going to have some points where you're actually losing power. So let's say maybe this was your current, right? And maybe this right here was your voltage. Yeah, this wouldn't, at some point, parts of this, you're going to lose power. Because when the voltage is positive, but when the current's negative, so let's say when the voltage is positive and when the current is negative, you're going to get some negative power, right? Or when the voltage is negative and the current's positive, then you're going to get some negative power as well. Negative number times a positive number will equal some negative power. And that's when you're actually taking energy from your system. And this is also called out of phase. This right here, when the peaks are not aligned with the peaks of both the current and the voltage. It's called out of phase. So out of phase. Now, you're not, in your introduction to circuit analysis class, you're not really going to have to worry about things that are out of phase. When they are out of phase, you don't really have to do differential equations. You're not going to have to do differential equations. You're going to do something called a phasor domain or use polar coordinates for this in the complex plane. So don't worry too much about this for now. Well, yeah, that was the fun stuff. Now we're going to get into the math. Yep, the math. Okay, so we're going to cover things like RMS and, let's see, RMS and your general formula for AC functions, like your sinusoidal formula. And we're also going to be working on some Ohm's law problems and such stuff like that using AC. So let's talk about RMS first. So V of RMS is your root mean squared for voltage, and I of RMS is your root mean squared for current. You can calculate these by using the voltage peak divided by the square root of 2 and your current peak divided by the square root of 2. So your current peak is basically just the peak current inside of your wave. So right here inside this wave, the highest current that actually you reach is 5 amps. Therefore, your peak current is 5. So you divide 5 by the square root of 2 to get your current RMS. Well, with the voltage, well, in the case of this example, the highest point of your voltage wave is just 2 volts, so you just divide 2 volts by the square root of 2. Well, what is RMS? RMS is simply the DC equivalent of AC. You're kind of just turning AC into DC, and they're the equivalent in terms of power delivery. So if you just used RMS and if you use the RMS for voltage and the RMS for current and calculated the power for both using AC and RMS, you're going to get the same things as if you used DC or anything like that. So it's basically turning AC into DC, or it's actually what the circuit is seeing in DC. It's not too hard to calculate. My class didn't cover this guy too much. I don't think I had this in a single time inside of an exam, but hope maybe you guys do. Okay, let's talk about the formula for AC. So the formula for AC usually looks like a cosine or a sine, doesn't matter. I'll use cosine. A cosine of the angular frequency times t plus your phase shift, usually represented by the symbol psi. Phi. This is phi. Yes. All right. Well, what does the amplitude stand for? Well, A in the amplitude just simply stands for the peak. Right. A just stands for the peak. That's the amplitude of your sinusoidal wave. Basically, for this current, A would be 5. Right. That's the peak of this current wave. Angular frequency is calculated another way, but let's talk about phase shift for now. So phase shift basically moves your entire wave left and to the right. So if your phase shift was, let's say, positive, right? If this was plus a positive phase shift, you would move this entire wave to the left. You would shift it to the left on the graph. And if this was a negative phase shift, then you would shift this wave to the right by that amount of radians. So this guy is in the unit of radians. This was pi over 2. Then you would shift it pi over 2 left or right, depending on if pi of 2 is negative or positive. All right, phase shift just moves things side to side, and that's what really makes things annoying for when you're solving alternating current. That's why you're going to need, That's why you're going to need phasor domain and the complex plane in order to solve these things. But let's talk about angular frequency. So angular frequency can be calculated by 2 pi times the frequency, and frequency can also be calculated by 1 over period. So frequency just tells you the amount of cycles that actually happen per second. Right. So the cycles per second just means, let's see. Let's talk about period first, actually. From, what color did I not use? Did I use all the colors? I did use all the colors that I normally use. Okay, let's use pink. So the entire wavelength is from, let's draw from crest to crest. So from crest to crest is an entire wavelength, or from trough to trough is an entire wavelength, okay? And the time it takes for this wave to travel from crest to crest or trough to trough is the, did I undo that? It's simply the period, okay? Just the amount of time it takes. So the period would be, let's see, the period, let's say, was 3 seconds here, then your frequency is 1 over 3, which is equal to 1 over 3 hertz. Okay, so the unit for frequency is hertz. If you live in America, usually the electrical grid is 60 hertz, and if you live in Europe, it's going to be 50. That was just a side fact. You didn't need to know that. But using the frequency, you can actually calculate the angular frequency by just multiplying frequency by 2 pi. And the angular frequency's unit is radians per second. Now, you really don't have to care too much about this angular frequency guy if you're taking an intro to circuit analysis class. My intro to circuit analysis class just gave us the angular frequency whenever we had a problem. And angular frequency just helps out solving things in the phasor domain. So they're not really, a lot of problems aren't really going to make you calculate that. But if you had to calculate it, they would just give you the period probably. And then you can calculate the frequency off of that, and then you can calculate the angular frequency off the period, given these two formulas. So I really just want to do some practice problems to show you all those laws that you learn in DC, like KVL, KCL, and Ohm's law. All those guys still apply in alternating current. So for this problem, you can actually use KVL. So let's go ahead and use KVL to find the voltage at this resistor. Well, voltages, some of the voltages rise and the drop. Right, V of R is simply just equal to, V of R is just simply equal to 180 sine of t. All right, this is just KVL. So, you know, maybe I'll write KVL here. KVL, there you go. So you guys know what I did. But now that we use KVL to solve for this newfound voltage, let's say 180 sine of t volts. All right, we can solve for the current at the resistor using Ohm's law. So Ohm's law, voltage, your voltage divided by resistance is equal to the current, which is 60 sine of t amps. All right, now that we have this, we have 60 sine of t amps for the current at the resistor, correct? Well, since this is a series circuit, the current is the same throughout this entire circuit. Now, if you don't know what a series circuit is, hopefully you do by now, but you could just use KCL at this node up top, and you can determine that there's only one current going in and one current going out, and that current going out is 60 sine of t. Therefore, I of S is equal to 60 sine of t amps. Let's go ahead and solve this circuit. So we have a current of 5 cosine of t amps. Well, since this is a series circuit, your 5 cosine of t amps is equal to all the other currents. So I of 1 and I of 2 are also equal to 5 cosine of t amps. So 5 cos t amps and 5 cos t amps here. Now that we know the current, we can simply apply, that's right, KCL. We can simply apply Ohm's law for both of the resistors. So if you apply Ohm's law for both the resistors, you can find the voltages at these resistors. So V1 is equal to the resistance, 10 ohms, times 5 cosine of t amps. Therefore, V of 1 is equal to, it's right up here actually, V of 1 is equal to 50 cosine of t volts. All right, what about V of 2? V of 2 is 8 ohms times the current, of course, which is cosine of t amps. 8 times 5 is simply equal to 40 cosine of t volts. So our voltage here is 40 cosine of t, and our voltage here is 50 cosine of t. All right? Well, we can solve for the voltage at the source by using KVL. So KVL, the voltage rises in the counterclockwise direction are V2 and V1, and the voltage drop is Vs. So if we were to actually set up this equation with our known values, V1 and V2, we can simply set up 50 cosine of t plus 40 cosine of t is equal to V of S. And if you add these two together, you simply get 90 cosine of t volts. And 90 cosine of t volts is the voltage at your source. So I just wanted to do these problems to show you that alternating current, all the KCL, Ohm's law, KVL, all still apply to the exact same math, right? You just do it with a cosine wave this time. But once you learn about inductors and capacitors, that's when it gets a little bit different. But that's going to be for another video. So as always, if you have any questions, put it down in the comment section. And if you found this video helpful, consider subscribing and liking the video. Thanks for watching.